Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Thursday morning to you all. I hope everyone is doing well out there this morning and having a great start to your day and a fantastic week out there so far. Here to bring you the latest on what's going to happen weather-wise for your Thursday. We run the risk of strong to severe storms once again for areas of like Texas, Oklahoma, even surrounding states. We're going to get very detailed on this and really just zoom right into Oklahoma and Texas, where you do run an enhanced risk, level 3 out of 5. I do expect this enhanced risk area that I'm about to show you to broaden a little bit. I don't think it'll go up a category to a moderate risk, 4 out of 5. I really don't. But I do think the outlook will change somewhat, and I'll speak on that here in a couple minutes when we get to that. We'll speak on that, get very detailed. We'll talk about the rest of the lower 48 like we always do. After we get done with that, we'll move on and speak on the days to come. We do run a risk of strong to severe storms basically for the foreseeable future. I don't see any day that runs a big time risk like a high-end enhanced, moderate, or higher risk, but we could get a couple enhanced risk days, level 3 out of 5. So we need to speak on this, talk about the pattern that's driving it. It's a little bit more complex than these typical patterns that drive severe weather risk, but we're going to try to explain it the best way we can here on this channel. And, just kind of give you some brief information about what I'm seeing in the longer range, as I do think we're going to have a different pattern. I'll just leave it at that. So if you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. And if anybody has anything that I can pray about or pray over, as always, please put those in the comments below. Really appreciate the successful May with the growth with the channel. It certainly had more growth than April and March. So thank you for the continued support on this channel, and just really I really appreciate y'all's support and the appreciation y'all show and all the kind comments. I haven't really seen any negative comments lately, so that's just been awesome to see when I run through all the comments every afternoon. So let's get rocking and rolling. So most of our moisture is over the middle of the country, and we do have strong to severe storms rumbling through southwestern Oklahoma and northern Texas right now as I speak, and the models are handled this yesterday for this morning really well. Now, they're not initiating well this morning, and I'll show you that here in a second, but it picked up on this. But it's very active once again for northern Texas, just a little bit further west compared to the last two mornings. We got a lot of moisture up here in Kansas in the form of some storms and heavy rain, and just moisture all the way up the plains, all the way up into Canada. A little area of moisture, I wouldn't say little, it's pretty large area of moisture. Some heavy rain you're waking up to here in southern Alabama, southern Mississippi. And then we're waking up to a washout just specifically for southern New England. But I do think this will clear out here in a few hours, but we'll speak on that. The rest of the country, not very active. You continue just to, be very calm in the southwest and things like that. So let's get going here and look at watches and warnings and advisories. Not a whole lot to speak on, guys. We do have those severe thunderstorm warnings ongoing here in Texas. But outside of that, other than a couple advisories that's not shown on this map, it's pretty quiet out there weather-wise. The excessive rainfall outlook. So this could increase too. I could see a moderate risk getting issued somewhere in Texas, but for now, a very large slight risk extending from areas of the Midwest, the Central Plains right here, all the way down into southern sections, south central Texas, I would say, all the way back to Louisiana. So in this yellow area, that means you have at least a 15% chance of flash flood guidance being exceeded within 25 miles in any given location. So Storm Prediction Center outlook for today: general risk of thunderstorms across the eastern seaboard, down here in southern sections of Florida where you really do need to rain. I've had a couple people been mentioning since last summer that it's very dry around the Tampa Bay area. So I hope you guys can get some rain soon from some of these pop-up storms. You got storms popping up in Florida. It just doesn't want to rain in Tampa. I'm not sure why. It happens at my house too. I think it happens just about everywhere. Sometimes I have this belief that sometimes if you go a really long time without rain, for example, in the summer, we can go through these awful stretches in the South where you go 10 to 15 days without rain, and we know how hot it gets in the South. So 15 days, 2 weeks without rain in the South in the summer, it don't take much to get your grass all brown and crispy. But I have a belief that I think the longer you go without rain, especially in the summer in the South, it almost is like you create a microclimate for your area. I don't know if that makes sense. It's almost like you almost create your own dry air, if you will, And it makes it, the longer you go basically without rain, the harder it is for it to rain until you finally do rain. I don't know if that makes sense, but I don't know. That's something I've observed over time. Luckily in my area, the last couple summers, we haven't had any awful dry stretches, but here's this risk of severe weather stretching. I mean, there's a marginal risk going all the way from southwest Minnesota all the way down to Houston, Texas, all the way down to San Antonio. Slight risk is pretty large, guys. I mean, includes a very small corner of northeastern New Mexico, southeastern Colorado, southwestern Kansas, all of entire western half of Oklahoma, all the way down into southwestern sections and southern sections of Texas. So, Midland including Abilene, Wichita Falls, Oklahoma City, and then the enhanced risk, which stretches from Amarillo to Lubbock. So let's talk about what this is driven off of. Here's a closer look at it. I'll let you check out the map here, but Guymon, Woodward, Oklahoma City, Norman, Dallas, Fort Worth area, Abilene, San Angelo, Midland, slight risk. Amarillo down to Lubbock, you got that enhanced risk. What is this driven off of? We have a big risk of tornadoes today. Well, it doesn't look like it. We had a nasty supercell around Clovis last night. If there was just a little bit more moisture at the surface, we would have had a really big issue with tornadoes, but there really wasn't, so that's good. That's good, but a nasty cell outside of Clovis. But this entire green area, that's a 2% risk of a tornado within 25 miles in a given location. And then the wind outlook, I do expect this to go up a category. I really do. I think that right here on your map, the yellow, that's a 15% risk of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour. But I do think you'll get another bump up to a 30% risk. That's just my personal opinion down here in Texas. I mean, it could be anywhere, though. So just be watching out for that. Right now, just a 15% risk of those winds exceeding 55 to 60. So we look at the hail outlook. We had some scary hailstorms the other night in West Texas, and once again, we could have them today for sure. So in the red area, that's a 30% chance of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger. The yellow area, that's a 15% risk of that. And then the entire black outline region, which does cover the entire red area and portions of the yellow, that's a 10%, that's a 10% risk of hail exceeding 2 inch in diameter or larger. So we're going to have some very large hail with these storms that fire in western and west central Texas today. Once again, Amarillo, Lubbock especially, but even all the way down to maybe as far south as like San Angelo could get a big risk of hail. So we'll watch out for that. And once again, my cat, 2 days in a row, is yelling at me from the other side of the door. He's always loving towards me, extra loving towards me, but the last 2 days have been just obsessive. So I'm definitely a cat person. I'm a dog person too, but sorry for the distraction there. But let's continue to talk about this. We'll really zoom in here in portions of New Mexico, all of Texas, and then Oklahoma. So I will mention the HRRR model is not initiating well at all. This is about, kind of what it's showing right now for Texas, right? You compare that with the actual radar, what's going on. We'll kind of zoom in this. We'll let this come in here for a second. And I just want to show you how these models don't always do the best. It has a nasty Boeing mesoscale convective system too, really. This other one's trying to form back here near Amarillo. It's got this one and this one. But this is what the HRRR model is trying to show is actually happening. It does show 2 areas of energy, right? But it's not near as robust. I mean, it has the location right, just not as robust. But we'll continue to get this going. It shows the first one that is popping off severe thunderstorm warnings right now does weaken, and it's really the second one that gets going here. And this is around, for example, this is around lunchtime. Nasty cells here in southwestern Oklahoma. This could very well be in more so in northern Texas, but it has this cluster of storms developing, sweeping across the southern half of Oklahoma, and eventually could get into the Dallas-Fort Worth area around 2, 3, 4 o'clock this afternoon. It kind of rides down the Red River north and south of it. And we got these pop-up downpours too in eastern Texas. I don't think those would be a huge concern. But I am concerned about if this gets going. If this gets going, you're going to have a nasty line of storms. The hours could be off, but I would watch this area this afternoon. And then you're starting to see these showers and storms bubbling up back here in western Texas. But yeah, 2 things are happening at this point. It's around 5 p.m., rush hour, dinner time, whatever it may be for your neck of the woods. You got this line of storms continuing to rumble through northeastern Texas, southeastern Oklahoma. And then you have these nasty supercells exploding here. I mean, they even have them almost, it looks like they form almost right on top or just east of Fort Stockton. The Storm Prediction Center thinks they'll form just east of Fort Stockton. Okay. I need to keep this going. And then these storms really start to get strong to severe at this point. 7 p.m. I mean, you basically got a cluster of storms all the way up here from Kansas, which I'll show you more of here in a second, down through the panhandle of Oklahoma and Texas, all the way through basically western and west central Texas, Lubbock, Amarillo, down to Odessa. You guys will run the risk of this. And it will have the potential to be destructive storms, guys. I mean, very large hail, it's damaging winds, and there will be a tornado threat. When you have storms that are just basically got so much thermodynamic energy, you always do run at least a risk of a tornado. So just always keep that in mind. But you keep these going, this will probably evolve into just a line of storms that'll sweep into western Oklahoma. These very well could extend all the way down here to the Big Hill Country of Texas. And these storms continue, could have storms already ongoing in eastern Texas around midnight at this point. Storms are heading towards the Dallas-Fort Worth area again. Wichita Falls getting hit by these storms. Abilene, around midnight tonight. Then we'll get some storms maybe all the way up to Oklahoma City. And I mean, this is 2 o'clock in the morning. This looks like an intense line of storms into central and northern Texas. And then they will continue, and I think we're waking up tomorrow morning with a nasty cluster of storms, capable of producing some very strong winds, some hail, maybe even a tornado threat, kind of sweeping through southeastern Texas. So we just got to watch for this. The updraft velocity swath, which indicates stronger updrafts, and rotating updrafts, which will tell us that, hey, there's a very large hail threat, and then there could be a little bit of a tornado risk. But remember, with the updraft velocity swath, it doesn't always tell the story with tornadoes. There's probably going to be a lot of storm action out here that's going to have a lot of broad rotation, but you really need tight rotation to get at least a chance for a tornado to form. So we'll definitely have a shot at some tornadoes, but really I would look at this and say, hey, very large hail threat, right? Damaging winds. So you can definitely tell where it's picking up on the nastiest weather. And then talking about winds, this is between now and the next 24 hours. So all this stuff up into here is really what happens this morning. But in general, just look at this and say, hey, there's pockets of damaging winds with any of these storms that kind of sweep through your general area here in Texas and Oklahoma today. You see areas of 50, 60, 70 mile per hour wind gusts. I do think the damaging wind outlook will increase. I really do. So we'll watch for that. The damaging winds is likely with some of these storms today for sure. And then you got the rainfall outlook. Once again, most of Texas is getting no shortage of rain so far. You sometimes you deal with these nasty drought conditions in Texas. I can't remember if it was last summer or the summer before, and there was areas of like south central, east central Texas that went basically the entire summer without any measurable rain. So I mean that blew my mind. It blew my mind. I remember I was looking at people's personal weather stations in Texas and how just unreal, you guys, the length of time some of you folks went without rain. So you're not getting that. You're getting a lot of rain this time. It's feast and famine in Texas, that's for sure. Southern Oklahoma, central Texas, northern Texas certainly is going to be the favored area for multiple inches of rain and over the next 24 hours. So the southeast today, pretty quiet, a little bit of return flow, really preventing any shower or storm activity. Once you get west away from that, you will introduce the chance for some showers, maybe an isolated storm. But Georgia, the Carolinas, up to Virginia, most of Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, drier air. It'll feel more like a spring or fall day out there. Low 80s, upper 70s, low humidity. Pop-up showers and storms do get going here in the southern half of the peninsula of Florida. So we'll watch out for that. Hopefully we can get one on Tampa, but this run of the HRRR model doesn't show it. It shows it a little bit further south. But we do have those pop-up showers and storms that could reach strong to severe limits in northern Louisiana. And then some storms that could dance around down here in the southern sections of the Gulf states. But like I said, the immediate southeast, we're not going to expect anything today. We could get a shower or two up here in northeast NC, southeast VA. We'll see if that happens. Storms could rumble through Arkansas into the overnight hours. And we'll start to get this little bit of a spin here in Arkansas. We'll talk about that here in a second. But the southeast weather today, pretty chill. Now, the northeast, 90% of the northeast is calm today. this morning. We're waking up just to washout conditions across the immediate southern New England region, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, down to Long Island. But I mean, this does show to clear out pretty quick. By the time we get to this afternoon, we'll start to deal with some rainy conditions up in Nova Scotia, Atlantic Canada. Now, we could get some wraparound moisture. I think we'll continue to deal with some lingering cloud cover in these areas. Could get some wraparound showers throughout southern New England. Very possible, maybe a thunder shower. But outside of that, everybody else in the Northeast, I mean, pretty calm, chill weather today. Now, the south central U.S., we've already zoomed in to Texas and Oklahoma, but I do want to mention up here in Kansas, the eastern half of Kansas today, if you live in these regions, down to Wichita, Topeka, just be careful of some showers and storms. You could get a strong or severe storm up here. There is a risk of severe weather. So you see these storms up here. Be mindful of these in eastern Kansas later on today. For sure, these could impact your weather. And then we see what happens in western Texas. And, I didn't show southwestern Kansas when we zoomed into the threat here in Oklahoma and Texas. But if you live in southwestern Kansas, I mean, even like Dodge City, watch out for some nasty storms. And then look at these up here in northwestern Kansas. Some storms up here. You see the cells developing in eastern Colorado. There's a lot going on. And then, as we start to get into about 9, 10 o'clock, you start to get a lot of strong to severe storm activity in western Kansas, southern Nebraska. And these will try to cluster up. And then we have that short wave that begins to spin around out here. It's weird. You got this cluster of storms that's heading to the southeast, and then this one just spinning around out here. So you're kind of waking up to just a lot of activity across this entire area, the central and southern plains, just kind of moving around out here. Could be waking up to some storms in Arkansas too. And just a much larger view at how much rain is expected over the next 24 hours for the National Weather Service. It does depict very well up here in Kansas 1 to 2 inches of rain. Like north of Topeka, even up into like just south of Omaha. Rain cuts off rather quick as you get into more stable, dry air once you get into Missouri, though. But you do have just rich, low-level moisture still getting pulled north into this region. So you're going to introduce the chances of showers and storms in this area because of that. This morning, you're dealing with the rain across the Dakotas, eastern Nebraska. This will continue just to chug throughout those sections of the states. Could get to the development of more showers and storms. It could reach severe limits in eastern, especially South Dakota, eastern Nebraska. We'll get some showers, widespread showers, and heavy rain across the western half of Minnesota. There's those storms once again continuing to intensify potentially in eastern South Dakota this afternoon. And then we get into this evening, might lose some steam. We could get some storms into western Iowa, scattered shower activity across Minnesota. And then as we start to get into the wee hours of the morning, tomorrow morning, I think this will dwindle away just to some showers, but Duluth could get some showers overnight. The western and northern sections of Wisconsin eventually starts to ooze into the UP of Michigan as we are getting into tomorrow morning. Just some scattered sprinkles, showers, maybe a heavier burst of rain throughout the Midwest that you're waking up to tomorrow morning. The western U.S., guys, there's not a whole lot to speak on out here. Really isn't. Some showers could greet you guys in the northern counties of Montana. A little bit of I wouldn't say a little, it's a pretty big area of low pressure up here in Canada that could sweep some energy down here to Montana. But outside of that, guys, the central, southern Rockies, the southwestern U.S., the west coast, it is rather quiet. I mean, there's really just not a whole lot going on out west, especially the southwestern U.S., which continues to be rather quiet. Temperatures are in the 60s to 70s across most of the Ohio Valley in the Northeast, but there's going to be pockets of temperatures only getting into the 50s in these higher elevations of like the Adirondacks. I mean, maybe all the way down to the Catskills, and I think it'll be locked into the 50s around Boston because of consistent cloud cover even after the rain today. It'll warm up into the 70s and 80s, maybe even a 90-degree temperature in the southeast, but it'll be drier. It won't be high humidity and just brutally humid. Now down here in Florida, of course, a different story. You just don't get cold fronts down here this time of the year. It'll be pretty hot, pretty miserable with some pop-up storms. Could even hit 100 degrees somewhere in central, just off the coastline of Florida. The immediate Gulf Coast, temperatures in the 80s, I would say. Midwest, 70s and 80s. Pretty hot deep down in Texas like it typically is this time of the year. Pretty cool temperatures in the central to northern Rockies, where you just kind of are being influenced by a little bit of lower pressure. And then, it's getting pretty hot in the southwest again. Pretty much summer just flexing its guns out here. Typical stuff, but just quiet weather, nice conditions. Summer's just raging on down here for sure. Now going forward, guys, we're gonna run the risk of strong to severe storms each and every day for the foreseeable future. I don't know when the last day is gonna be where we don't have at least a marginal risk. We might not have it for the rest of summer. It's just typical stuff in the summer. So I don't see it anytime soon either. Slight risk. I just don't see any high-end days right now. But tomorrow, a pretty large slight risk that once again covers Texas. Okay, southern Oklahoma, southwestern Arkansas, western Louisiana, good chunk of Texas. Level 2 out of 5 risk of severe weather. Tornado risk isn't expected to be very high, less than 2%. The wind threat, though, 15% risk of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour. And the hail threat, a 15% risk in a smaller section, Dallas, Waco, down to Abilene, pretty much up to just south of Wichita Falls, 15% risk of hail, exceeding that 1 inch in diameter or larger. This outlook could change. It most likely will. I don't know if it'll get bumped up to an enhanced risk, but we'll certainly watch. And then we start to get into Saturday. Threat begins to shift a little bit further north, a slight level 2 out of 5 risk up here in the central high plains. But we still got a risk of strong to severe storms stretching all the way down to the southern plains, all the way into areas of now the central and southern Mississippi Valley. Okay, Delta region down to the deep south. So it looks like the chance of thunderstorms is starting to shift a little bit further east again after low pressure. I would say that return flow, keeping dry, stable air in place, preventing any thunderstorm activity over the next couple of days in the southeast. So all we know in this yellow area, that just means there's a 15% chance of severe weather. Storm chasers love to go out here because it's wide open areas, beautiful country, and more importantly, the storms that do form in lower populated regions. You don't have to worry about as much, I never want to say it never, but you don't have to worry about it hitting a higher populated region out here. But please don't think I'm, saying anything about you people who live out here. Trust me, I would love to live out here. My wife people think I'm crazy, but still, the UP of Michigan's got my heart. That's one place I would absolutely love to live. So, or the interior sections of New England. Those are my two fantasy areas to live for sure. So, I know people down south are probably thinking I'm absolutely nuts for saying that, but. Sunday, it could be another day, but it shifts, further north and to the northeast, Minneapolis, Sioux Falls, Aberdeen, you guys run a 15% risk of severe weather. We're getting into early June now. Severe weather on average begins to shift further north. Once you get into June, July, eventually even into August. August is really a big month for Canada. And then when we start to get back into September, October, the jet on average begins to shift a little bit further south. So our severe weather chances shift south and we get that secondary severe weather season in the fall across the lower 48. But 15% risk for Sunday for severe weather. So we already have that day 4 15% risk up. So what is this driven off of? Well, once again, orange, higher pressure, blue, lower pressure. This is at 500 millibars. This is kind of the nerdy way to show you guys the pattern in general. So I'm going to try to explain this the best way I can because this pattern is a little bit more complex. Okay, so we got this area of low pressure, and this is for tomorrow. We're not going to talk about today's setup. This is for tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow evening. So remember, we have that severe weather threat for tomorrow down here. Okay, and you're thinking, well, we got low pressure up here, right? Why isn't there no severe weather threat up here for Friday? Well, you're lacking really thermodynamics, but you could get some energy that might pop off a marginal risk that gets pushed maybe up into this region. You do have a general risk of thunderstorms hugging the Canadian-US line, but in general, you're probably lacking thermodynamics. One thing I want you to put your eyes on down here, you see this kind of area in white that extends down into here and just is all down here. You can't really see it well, but there's flow down here, kind of westernly, northwesternly flow. And that flow is overriding what still is a pretty moist air mass across this region. And notice that area I circled is where you have that slight risk. Well, more so right in here tomorrow. So you can't really see it. There's other better ways to look at this, but we're going to just kind of focus on one screen to limit a bunch of different panels here. So there's a lot of flow going on through here that's kind of going like this. And there's pieces of energy that you can't really see down here, kind of undercutting a little bit of ridging right into here at 500 millibars. Meanwhile, you got this area of low pressure up here that really isn't bringing any heightened risk of strong to severe storms. Okay, so little pieces of energy embedded in this flow down here. You keep this going. There's a little bit of energy right into here also. See this kind of white area right here? And we get into Saturday. Stop it right here. This is Saturday's outlook. That's got a slight risk right here, right? Marginal risk extending all the way, kind of hooking into this region. So this area in white right here, where you continue just to get a little bit of flow, but you can see that there is lower pressure right here in the white. Now, what's driving, this severe weather threat into here, where you got that slight risk? Well, I think it's a combination of a couple things, but it's not really driven off a whole lot. There's pieces of energy now up here in this northerly flow too, that's kind of riding right into here on the southern flank of this lower pressure, which typically, I've explained this before, in the wider areas you can see, that's typically where you have the energy. Between the blue and the orange is typically where you have the energy. So you're going to have a little bit of flow up here. Definitely enough low-level moisture for high plain standards riding into this region. This will pose a severe weather threat into this region. Not much, but there is enough to make it a slight risk. But it's hard to explain this pattern because there's little embedded impulses of energy in both areas of flow that you can't really see on this screen without looking at the surface maps. I can show you the surface maps till the cows come home. But sometimes when you get past 2 days out, you can really only look at this stuff right here. This is a lot harder to explain than your typical outbreak of severe storms. Typically, it's right there on the map, very easy to pick up on, and all that stuff. But you start to get into Sunday, which remember we have that slight risk right in here, right? So what is this driven off of? And I will note, you're probably gonna have some thunderstorms down here to the south too. Still a little bit of flow down here. We'll have to watch this area of the southeast. Maybe some thunderstorm development. Maybe. But really, your eyes go to this. Once again, some flow undercutting this lower pressure, kind of going into this region. We're probably going to have some sort of embedded area of energy right in here, the little squiggly line. And you're probably going to get just enough pull up of low-level moisture under the 500 millibar mark that kind of rises up into this region. So therefore, you do got that severe weather threat somewhere into here that's a more heightened severe weather threat, with a flow kind of going right into here, southern side of this lower pressure, and you can't really tell what's going on, but you do have a pull up of low-level moisture into this region also. But this might not be the only area we see severe weather Sunday. There could be other, like a bimodal setup where there might be a threat of severe weather down here to the south too. All in all, guys, none of this is significant. I really don't think. I mean, I think at worst we get an enhanced risk, but your moderate and high risk, honestly, that starts to take a seat back once you start to get deeper into summer. But we saw it, what happened in last June when we had multiple severe weather outbreaks. We had this weird abnormal June severe weather moderate risk down in like Alabama and Georgia last year that actually produced tornadoes. So I'm not saying we're done with a higher end risk of severe weather, but I'm saying I don't expect any of this to be. Could be wrong though. After that, we get into Monday. I don't know what's going to happen at this point. All we know is it's kind of the same similar setup. Next Monday, it looks like you still got some flow down here. You certainly have flow up here. A little bit of ridging right into here, kind of between it all, sandwiched in. And, you could have a risk of strong to severe storms, maybe somewhere in the northern Rockies in the valley regions, somewhere in here. Very well could. We'll have to watch for that. And then the pattern continues to progress. And this is when it gets a little bit more amplified. For example, let's just go to Wednesday. And let's go to Wednesday evening. Tall Ridge. This is when things get different. Tall Ridge builds into the western U.S. You're starting to see a trough that's about to drop down into the eastern U.S. What is that going to do? Well, I think you're going to have energy riding down into this region right into here. So trough dropping down, ridge building in, energy in between. Okay, so we call this a northwest flow. I mean, it's literally coming out in the northwest. And what happens when these patterns set up, you have pieces of energy that basically, we call them ridge riders in the weather community. And basically they ride the upper and side portions of this ridge of high pressure and they flow down, and you could get all kinds of weather. Damaging winds is typically a big risk with these, but you can get tornadoes and hail too. And, you know, you hear people mention the word derecho and stuff like that, those 100-mile-per-hour winds associated with these lines of storms. This is typically when we get into that derecho, however way you say it, season. When we get into June and July. If there's a higher chance of it happening, it would happen with this. And you keep this going until around this time next week, trough starts to really set up. And I really think that this could keep us with below average temperatures across the eastern U.S., at least to kickstart June, maybe first half of June or something like that. I don't see any really hot temperatures for the eastern U.S. anytime soon, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But I mean, you continue to see this, and eventually, you know, you get into like next Friday. This is like 8 days out. I mean, you get this anchored in ridge that just looks, it's going to pump some very hot temperatures across the western U.S. But, you know, in between this, flow dropping down between the trough, rounding into this region, what's going to happen with this? Big trough dropping down. But I would say long-range model guidance continues to show this. What does this mean? Well, like I said, it means you're probably going to have rounds of storms riding through here, right? Might have some flow undercutting this. And this area in blue that you're seeing could just bring below average temperatures immediately embedded in that lower pressure, some rainy, cloudy conditions, cooler than average temperatures, and then kind of sandwiched in between, you're probably going to have strong to severe storms kind of flowing through. So my cat on the other side of my room is going absolutely crazy, so I'm going to wrap this video up. But that's all I got. God bless all y'all. Y'all have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you again soon.